The dead warforge had not breathed in 70 years, but the court still brought Asha Veynn to kneel before it, as if her small lungs could wake a kingdom's shame. They dragged her across the black stone floor by a chain fastened around her waist, not because she could run, but because humiliation looked cleaner when dressed as law. Every noble wolf in the Hall of Cinders had gathered beneath the black banners of the Kharrow throne, their rings bright as teeth, their fur-lined cloaks silvered by candlelight. Against the eastern wall, the old forge crouched like a sleeping beast, its iron mouth cold, its chimney dark enough to swallow stars. Asha kept her eyes lowered. That was the first rule beaten into every forge-bound Omega: never look directly at the royal flame. The second rule was worse: never let the royal flame look back. "Closer," Lord Osric Kharrow said. His voice carried the calm weight of a man who had ordered deaths often enough to make them sound like court procedure. He stood beside the forge in wolf-black velvet, one hand resting on the ivory handle of the ceremonial bellows. Silver threaded his beard. A ruby seal burned on his thumb. He looked almost gentle, if one did not notice how every servant flinched when his gaze moved. Asha was shoved forward. Her knees struck the ring of ash before the forge. The ash was old, older than any living wolf. Noble children were told it came from enemy banners. Soldiers were told it came from traitors. Omegas whispered another answer in the kitchens. The ash came from wolves who had burned without screaming. Asha felt it bite through the thin cloth of her grey dress. Someone laughed softly behind her. "Look at her hands," a young noblewoman murmured. "She is shaking already." "She shakes when carrying soup," another replied. "What did you expect from a smoke-fed thing?" Asha curled her fingers into the ash until the sting steadied her. Her hands were narrow, scarred, permanently stained from cleaning soot gutters beneath the palace. No matter how hard she scrubbed, black dust clung beneath her nails. The court had named her Ash Rat before she knew how to read. The Forge Master had named her Useful because she did not complain. Lord Osric had named her Proof. Proof of weakness. Proof that Omega blood could kneel under royal fire and remain nothing. A horn sounded at the far end of the hall. The laughter died. The great doors opened, and Alpha King Rhydian Kharrow entered beneath a storm of black banners. He did not walk like a king who needed to be announced. He walked like stone had learned to obey him. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark armor chased with dull silver, he moved through the hall with the stillness of a blade not yet drawn. A mantle of black wolf fur hung from one shoulder. His hair was midnight dark, tied back from a face too severe to be softened by candlelight, but his eyes silenced the room completely. Gold. Not warm gold, not summer gold, predator gold. Asha saw them only once before lowering her gaze again, but once was enough. Something behind her ribs pulled tight, like a hidden string recognizing a note it had been forbidden to answer. Behind Rhydian, where a royal wolf shadow should have stood whole and proud, something dark shifted unevenly against the banners. For one heartbeat, Asha thought she saw it limp. Then it vanished. She told herself it was fear. Fear was safer than wonder. Rhydian stopped before the throne of charred oak. He did not sit. His gaze moved over the forge, Lord Osric, the gathered nobles, and finally the Omega kneeling in ash. "Why is she chained?" he asked. The hall did not breathe. Lord Osric smiled with sorrowful patience. "Because the rite requires the weakest vessel, Your Majesty. Weak things often break unpredictably. She is an Omega. She is forge, bound property." Asha's stomach tightened, but she did not lift her head. Property. The word always sounded different in noble mouths. Not cruel, not angry, merely certain. Like winter, like moonrise, like law. Lady Maelith Thornholt stepped from the line beside the dais. She was the favored lunar candidate, though no crown had touched her pale hair yet. Her gown was white silk over silver mail, beautiful enough to flatter, armored enough to threaten. "Surely the girl understands the mercy being offered," Maelith said. "If the forge stays dead beneath her breath, she is only what we already believe. Weak, unchosen, harmless." A few nobles smiled. And if it wakes? Rhydian asked. Lord Osric answered too quickly. It will not. The king turned his head slightly. For one breath, Asha felt the entire court lean toward the silence between uncle and nephew. Then Rhydian looked back at her. What is your name? No one had asked her that in the royal hall before. The question struck harder than mockery. Asha swallowed. Her throat felt lined with ash. Asha Veynn, your majesty. A murmur stirred at the edges of the room. Speak louder, Lord Osric said. Asha raised her voice. Asha Veynn. Rhydian's eyes narrowed. Not in recognition. In pain. It was gone before anyone else could see it, but Asha saw. A flicker beneath the gold, as if something inside him had stirred and clawed against bone. Lord Osric struck the floor once with his blackwood staff. The girl is of no house, no scent, no wolf call, no moon record. She was found in the lower ash cradles after the plague winter and kept by mercy of the crown. Tonight she will repay that mercy by serving the old rite. Asha wanted to say mercy did not chain children to soot grates. Mercy did not feed girls after wolves had finished. Mercy did not teach them to sleep lightly because noble sons liked to test whether omegas could bruise. But quiet dignity had been the only thing she owned long enough to trust. So she said nothing. A forge servant placed the ash fan in her hands. It was not the bellows. Of course not. The bellows belonged to noble hands, to ritual hands, to hands that had never scrubbed blood from stone. Asha was given the flat blade of blackened iron with its cracked leather grip. It was heavy enough that her wrist dipped. The court laughed again. Rhydian did not. His gaze lowered to the fan, and his jaw tightened. Lord Osric saw it. Do not pity her, Majesty. Pity is how kingdoms rot from within. No, Rhydian said quietly. Lies do that faster. The words moved through the hall like a drawn knife. Before Lord Osric could answer, the warforge made a sound. Not loud. Not dramatic. A small, hollow click came from deep within its iron belly. Asha froze. The ash beneath her knees cooled, then warmed, then curled around her skin like something waking by touch. Every wolf in the hall lifted its head at once. Somewhere high in the rafters, a chain began to tremble without wind. Lord Osric's face went still. Rhydian took one step forward. Asha felt the forge looking at her, not with eyes, not with flame, with memory. The iron fan grew warm in her grip. Silver letters appeared beneath the soot, shaped like claw marks and crescent moons. Pain flashed across her palms. She gasped and almost dropped it. Lord Osric moved fast enough that his robe snapped around him. Begin the rite. The forge master hesitated. My lord, the fan. Begin. A drum sounded once. The court settled into cruel attention. Asha knew what they expected. The chosen Omega would kneel, fan the dead forge until exhaustion bent her spine, and nothing would happen. Then the court would laugh. The priest would mark her brow with cold soot, and everyone would return to wine, assured that weakness had been properly displayed beneath power. But Rhydian's voice cut through the drumbeat. Remove her chain. Lord Osric did not look at him. The rite has begun. He gave an order. And I guard a law older than your crown. That was when Asha understood something more dangerous than her own fear. The king was not fully master here. Not in this hall. Not before this forge. The chain stayed locked around her waist. Rhydian's gold eyes darkened. For a moment, she thought he would cross the ash circle and tear the iron from her body himself. Instead, he stopped, caught between throne and blood, law and instinct. Asha hated herself for understanding it. A king could not always save one girl without losing the power to save 1,000. That was what people said when they wished to make cowardice sound wise. But he was looking at her as if the answer hurt him. And that, foolishly, hurt worse. Lord Osric raised his hand. Asha Veynn, forge-bound Omega of no house and no wolf, you have been called before the warforge of Kharrow to prove the purity of royal flame. Fan the dead fire. Let the old iron judge what kind of blood kneels before it. The hall waited. Asha lifted the fan. The first stroke dragged through the ash-heavy air. Cold smoke spilled from the forge. Not black, silver. A sound passed through the court that was almost a gasp and almost a growl. Asha stared. Silver smoke did not rise from dead war iron. War smoke was black when hungry, red when woken, white when mourning. Silver belonged to moon pyres and royal funerals. Silver meant a wolf spirit had crossed the veil. Lord Osric's hand lowered slowly. Lady Maleth stepped back before she could hide it. The smoke curled toward Asha, thin as breath, bright as moonlit fur. It brushed her cheek. For the first time in her life, something touched her as if she were not dirty. The forge clicked again. This time, every candle in the hall bent toward her. Behind Rhydian, the wounded wolf shadow appeared once more, vast and dark, its ribs faintly glowing beneath torn smoke fur. It looked at Asha, then it lowered its head. Panic broke through the noble rose. "Impossible," someone breathed. Lord Osric's face lost all warmth. "Stop the rite." Asha did not stop. She could not. The fan moved again, though she no longer knew whether her hands commanded it or the forge did. The second stroke sent silver smoke rolling across the floor. It circled her knees, climbed the chain at her waist, and passed through the iron links as if searching for the shape of a wound. Where the smoke touched, old scars woke. A memory that was not hers flashed behind her eyes. A woman screaming without sound. A cradle hidden beneath coals. A wolf made of white flame throwing itself against a sealed door. A man's voice saying, "Burn the name before the child learns it." Asha cried out. The forge roared, not with fire, with a howl. Stone dust fell from the rafters. The banners snapped in a wind that came from nowhere. The ash circle shattered outward in a ring of silver sparks, and the chain around Asha's waist burned white-hot. Rhydian surged forward. Lord Osric shouted, "Hold the king!" No one dared touch him. But the forge opened. Its iron mouth split wider than iron should split, and from the depth where no flame had lived for 70 years, smoke rose in a towering shape. First paws, then shoulders, then a mane of silver vapor threaded with sparks of ancient blue. A wolf emerged from the dead forge, larger than any beast Asha had ever imagined, its body made of smoke and moonfire, its eyes bright with royal sorrow. Its head nearly brushed the vaulted ceiling. Its breath rolled over the court with the scent of winter steel, burned cedar, and something heartbreakingly familiar. Home. Asha could not breathe. The giant wolf stepped over the broken ash circle. Every noble wolf in the hall collapsed to one knee. Not by choice, by blood. Even Lady Maleth fell, one gloved hand slamming against the stone. Lord Osric alone remained standing, trembling with fury, his ruby seal blazing like an infected wound. The silver smoke wolf lowered its massive head before Asha Veynn. Then it bowed. The court went silent enough to hear the king's wounded wolf shadow whine. Asha stared into the creature's moonlit eyes, and the words that came from the forge were not spoken aloud, yet every soul in the hall heard them. Last daughter of the first war flame, return what was stolen. Then the silver wolf turned its gaze toward Alpha King Rhydian Kharrow, and the dying shadow behind him began to bleed fire. Fire bled from the king's wolf shadow in thin red threads. It did not fall like blood. It unraveled from the torn ribs of the dark shape behind Rhydian Kharrow, hissing when it touched the stone, leaving sparks that smelled of burned oath and old iron. The shadow wolf tried to stand tall, as a royal beast should, but one foreleg bent beneath it. Its head lowered for half a breath before pride forced it upright again. Asha saw the pain. So did the silver smoke wolf behind her. The giant spirit bared its teeth. Every torch in the Hall of Cinders bent blue. No one dared speak. The nobles who had laughed at Asha only moments before remained half-kneeling, their bodies caught between fear and blood law. Lady Maleth Thornholt's white gown pooled around her like spilled frost. One gloved hand pressed hard against the floor. Her face was pale, but her eyes were not broken. They were watching, weighing, already searching for the safest knife. Lord Rhydian Kharrow was the first to move. Seal the hole. The guards obeyed before they understood. Iron bars dropped across the great doors with a thunderous crash. The sound made several omegas at the edge of the chamber flinch, but Asha did not look away from the king's wounded shadow. Something about its pain pulled at her chest, not with pity, but with recognition, as if one locked thing had heard another. Rhydian did not turn toward the doors. His eyes remained on the fire leaking from his own wolf. "What has been done to it?" he asked. The question was quiet. That made it more dangerous. Osric's expression settled into cold discipline. "Nothing has been done, Your Majesty. Your wolf reacts to forbidden forge, smoke. The girl has brought a curse into the royal hall." Asha's fingers tightened around the ash fan. "I brought nothing." Her voice came out rough, but the forge caught it and carried it farther than it should have. Heads turned. She felt the weight of every stare. For years, silence had kept her alive. Silence had made beatings shorter, hunger less personal, noble cruelty easier to pass through like bad weather. Speaking now felt like stepping onto a frozen river and hearing it crack beneath her. But the silver wolf stood behind her, and for the first time in her life, the court could not pretend she had no shadow. "You ordered me to fan it," Asha said. "I obeyed." A few nobles looked down as if the floor had become safer than the truth. Osric's ruby seal flared on his hand. A curse often hides itself in obedience. Rhydian looked at Asha then, not softly, not kindly. His gaze was too sharp for comfort, too guarded for trust. But he looked at her like a person whose answer mattered. "What did you see when the smoke touched you?" Osric turned. "Majesty, do not invite witch visions into judgment." "I did not ask you." The words cut cleanly through the hole. Osric went still. Asha swallowed. The memory still trembled under her skin. Heat, darkness, a woman's silent scream, a small body hidden where no child should have lived. "I saw a cradle beneath coals," she said. The silver smoke wolf lowered its head. Asha forced herself to continue. "I saw a woman reaching for it. She was burning, but she made no sound." Rhydian's face did not change, yet his wounded wolf shadow shuddered behind him. More fire slipped from its ribs. "And I heard a man say," Asha's breath caught, "burn the name before the child learns it." The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Somewhere near the dais, Lady Maleth slowly rose. She did not rush. She knew the court was watching, and even fear could be made graceful in noble hands. "My king," she said, voice soft as silk drawn over a blade. "Whatever this girl believes she saw, the danger is clear. A forge. Spirit bowed to her. Your wolf bleeds because of her presence. If the border packs hear of this before we understand it, they will not call it miracle. They will call it weakness." Rhydian's gaze did not leave Asha. "And what would you call it?" Maleth hesitated only a fraction. A threat that should be contained. Asha knew that word. Contained meant moonsalt on the tongue until speech failed. Contained meant silver cuffs lined with prayer thorns. Contained meant a locked room below the temple where questions were asked until answers pleased the questioner. Osric lifted his staff. "Lady Maleth speaks wisely. The girl must be taken below before the spirit gathers more strength." The chain around Asha's waist tightened. For one terrified heartbeat, she thought the guards had pulled it. They had not. The chain was moving by itself. White light crawled along each iron link. Not freeing her, not hurting her, but reading her. The silver wolf's breath rolled over her shoulder, cold and bright. The ash fan pulsed in her hands like a second heartbeat. Rhydian stepped toward her. The smoke wolf's growl shook dust from the ceiling. He stopped at once. Asha saw anger flash across his face, but it was not the anger of a man denied. It was the fury of a king discovering that even his approach could wound what he meant to protect. His voice lowered. "Will it let me near her?" No one answered. The silver wolf stared at him with ancient sorrow. Then it looked toward his bleeding shadow. Rhydian understood before anyone else did. Asha saw it strike him, The spirit was not guarding her from him alone. It was guarding her from whatever his blood carried. Osric saw that understanding and moved quickly. Enough. Gods, take the Omega. Steel shifted. Asha's body remembered fear before her mind could stop it. She stepped back, but the chain held her in the broken ash circle. The first guard crossed the silver line on the floor. The war forge clicked. The guard froze. A second click followed. Then a third. Every sound came from deep inside the iron belly, slow and deliberate, like knuckles striking the inside of a coffin. No one breathed. Rhydian raised one hand, and the guards halted. The knocking continued. Once. Twice. Again. Asha felt the ash beneath her bare feet warm, not burn, wake. The silver wolf bent closer until its muzzle nearly touched her hair, its moonfire eyes fixed on the forge, and for the first time, fear passed through its vast shape. Not fear for itself. Fear of what had been left inside. A voice came from the dead war forge. Small. Hoarse. Young. Asha. The name slipped through the hall like smoke under a locked door. Asha's heart stopped. The voice knocked again from within the iron dark. Let me out. The child's voice did not echo like sound. It seeped from the war forge as if the iron itself had learned to whisper. Asha stood trapped in the broken ash circle, every breath caught between terror and recognition. The voice had used her name as if it had known her before she knew herself. Not Ash Rat. Not forge-bound property. Not Omega. Asha. Spoken softly, desperately, from inside a furnace that had been dead longer than she had been alive. Lord Osric recovered first. Do not answer it. No one moved. The silver smoke wolf lowered its head until its muzzle hovered near Asha's shoulder, but its eyes remained fixed on the forge. Moonfire trembled through its body. The great spirit looked powerful enough to crush the hall, yet the child's voice had frightened it. That frightened Asha more. Rhydian took one step closer to the forge. His wounded shadow wolf limped behind him, fire still leaking through its torn ribs. Each step seemed to cost the beast something it refused to admit. Asha felt its pain like heat beneath her own skin, and hated that she understood it. She knew what it meant to stand upright because falling would please too many people. Open it, Rhydian said. Osric turned on him. The warforge does not open for curiosity. It just spoke her name. It mimicked her name. The forge knocked once. Harder. Several nobles flinched. Lady Malith's hand tightened around the silver chain at her throat, but her face remained composed. She watched Asha now with sharpened interest, not merely fear. Asha had seen that look before from noble women inspecting bruised servants. Not pity, not hatred, but ownership rearranging itself. My king, Malith said. Whatever hides inside that iron waited until the court was sealed and your wolf was weakened. That is not innocence. That is strategy. Asha almost laughed, though nothing was funny. Of course they would call even a trapped child strategic. Power always believed the powerless were dangerous the moment they cried out. Rhydian's gaze flicked to her. Not long, not tender, but enough that she knew he had heard the thought in her face. What do you feel from it? He asked. Asha stared at the forge. Its iron mouth had closed again after birthing the silver wolf, but along the seams, a faint blue-white glow pulsed like breath beneath skin. I don't know. Tre. The word was not gentle, but it was not cruel either. Asha's grip tightened around the ashvan. I have tried all my life, Your Majesty. I tried to be quiet enough not to be struck, useful enough not to be sold, small enough that noble wolves would look past me instead of through me. Trying does not make old iron speak plainly. A hush followed. The court had expected fear, perhaps gratitude, perhaps weeping. Not anger. Not from her. Rhydian's gold eyes held hers. Something in his expression shifted, almost invisible. Respect, perhaps. Or warning. Then do not try for me, he said. Try for whoever called you. That landed differently. Asha looked back at the forge. The silver wolf's breath moved over her hair. The chain at her waist trembled, still floating from her dress, still undecided. The ash beneath her feet warmed in a slow circle. She closed her eyes, not because she trusted the darkness, but because the hall's watching faces were too heavy. For a moment, there was only smoke, then heat, then the memory of being very small, wrapped in something rough, while a woman's arms shook around her. Not from fear, from effort, from love. Asha had no memory of love. That was how she knew this one was not hers alone. A song hummed beneath the vision. No words, only a rhythm like a heartbeat inside flame. Asha opened her eyes. "It is not behind the door," she whispered. Osric's face changed. Barely. Rhydian noticed. Asha did too. "What door?" the king asked. Asha looked at the iron belly of the forge. "There is another chamber beneath it." "No," Osric said. "Too fast." The silver smoke wolf growled. Asha felt the truth in the sound. The forge was not only a furnace, it was a seal. A tomb built to look like a weapon. Whatever knocked from inside had not been trapped in the fire, but below it. Rhydian turned to his uncle. "You told me the lower chambers collapsed before my father's reign." "They did." "Then why is she hearing something beneath them?" "Because she is cursed." Asha lifted her chin, though her body shook. "You keep using that word, as if it can cover every locked room." Osric's eyes cut to her, and for one breath she saw the man beneath the velvet. Not calm, not wise, but furious that a thing he had buried had learned to speak through an Omega's mouth. Rhydian saw it too. "Remove her chain," he said. This time, his voice carried no room for ceremony. A guard stepped forward with the key. The silver wolf did not stop him. The guard's hands shook so badly the iron rang. When the key entered the lock at Asha's waist, the chain flared white. The guard cried out and stumbled back, smoke curling from his glove. The lock remained closed. Osric's mouth twitched. Rhydian crossed the ash line before anyone could warn him. The silver wolf snarled, but did not strike. Asha went still as the Alpha King came close enough that she could see the faint burned scars at his throat, where armor did not hide them. He smelled of winter leather, blood-warmed steel, and a fire that had been starving for years. His presence pressed against every instinct in her body. Kneel. Flee. Do not look. Do not want rescue from the hand that may one day close around your throat. Rhydian reached for the chain. Asha stepped back as far as the iron allowed. His hands stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I will not drag you," he said quietly. The words unsettled her more than force would have. Asha looked at his hand. Broad, scarred, steady. A king's hand, a killer's hand. A hand that had almost reached for her in the ash circle and stopped, because the throne had held him by the throat. "If it burns you?" she asked. His gaze did not leave hers. "Then we will know it hates my blood." "That does not comfort me." "No," he said. "It should not." Before she could answer, the forge knocked again. This time the sound cracked the stone ring beneath their feet. A line split through the ash, racing from the forge to Asha's chain. The lock burst open. Iron links fell away from her waist. They did not hit the floor. They turned to ash before they landed. The hall erupted in shouts. Rhydian caught Asha by the wrist before the shock could make her fall. His touch was warm, too warm, and the moment his skin closed around hers, his wounded wolf shadow gave a strangled howl. Asha gasped. A mark she had never seen before flared beneath the soot on her palm. A tiny silver flame shaped like a wolf's eye. Rhydian saw it. So did Osric. The old lord's face emptied of all pretense. "Kill the lights," he said. The torches went black at once. In the sudden dark, Lady Maleth whispered from somewhere near the dais, "Now," and silver arrows hissed toward Asha from every wall. Darkness broke open with the sound of metal striking smoke. Rhydian moved before Asha understood the danger. One moment his hand was around her wrist. The next, his body stood between her and the walls. Silver arrows tore through the black air, their heads glowing with moon salt, each one aimed for her throat, her heart, her marked palm. The king's wounded wolf shadow surged up behind him. It took the first volley. Asha heard the arrows sink into something that was not flesh and not mist. The shadow wolf gave a sound like a mountain cracking. Red fire spilled from its ribs and splashed across the stones, lighting the hall in flashes of blood-bright flame. "Rhydian," someone screamed. "Not Maiestu." His name. Asha did not know whether the voice came from the court, the wolf, or her own mouth. The silver smoke wolf roared. Its body exploded outward, filling the hall with moonlit vapor. Arrows slowed inside it, trembling as if caught in deep water. Their silver heads blackened one by one, then fell uselessly into the ash. The torches flared back to life. Chaos stood revealed. Along the upper galleries, 6 masked archers crouched between the carved wolf pillars. Their bows were royal make, black horn and silver string. Not assassins from the border, not raiders, palace men, men who knew where the court lamps could be cut and where a frightened Omega would stand when darkness fell. Rhydian saw them. So did the nobles. Lady Malith stood very still near the dais, her pale face smooth, one hand resting lightly against her throat as if the attack had frightened her too much to move. But Asha remembered the whisper in the dark. No. Lord Osric did not look at the archers. That was how Asha knew. He knew exactly where they had been. "Seize them," Rhydian said. His voice was low, but every guard in the hall flinched as if struck. 2 of the archers dropped their bows at once. One tried to run. Before he reached the stair, the silver smoke wolf turned its head. The man collapsed to his knees, clawing at his own chest, not wounded, only forced down by some older command his blood could not disobey. Asha stared at him. He was not looking at Rhydian. He was looking at her, with hatred, with terror, with recognition he did not want to have. The ash fan burned hotter in her hand. The small wolf-eye flame on her palm pulsed once, and a thread of silver smoke slid from the forge toward the fallen archer. It curled around his wrist. Beneath his sleeve, a hidden brand appeared, a black hammer crossed by a broken wolf bone. Osric's face hardened. Rhydian turned. "Forge, guard." The words spread through the hall like poison. The forge guard were not supposed to exist anymore. Even Asha, who had learned most royal history from overheard kitchen arguments, knew that. They had been the old keepers of Warflame, sworn to no king unless the forge accepted him. The council claimed they had died out with the last war fire. Yet one knelt before her with the mark still burned into his skin. Malith's voice trembled beautifully. "My king, this proves the danger. Hidden cultists answer her. Spirits answer her. Even the dead forge answers her. She is not a victim of this attack. She is the reason it happened." The lie was elegant enough that some nobles wanted to believe it. Asha felt it happening. The shift. The hunger to make the impossible simple again. If they named her curse, they would not need to ask why royal arrows had flown inside a sealed hall. Rhydian released her wrist slowly. The loss of his touch should have comforted her. It did not. His hand fell to the sword at his side. "One more person calls her guilty before I question the men who shot at her, and I will consider that person part of the same command." No one spoke. Asha looked at him, startled by the violence of the protection and the restraint inside it. He had not chosen her. Not truly. His court still stood between them. His blood still made the silver wolf bare its teeth. But in that moment, he drew a line in the stone and dared the kingdom to cross it. The wounded shadow wolf behind him swayed. Asha saw it before anyone else did. "Your wolf," she whispered. Rhydian's jaw tightened. "Do not look at it." "Why?" "Because pity is another kind of blade." Asha's answer came before fear could stop it. "Then stop bleeding where I can see." His eyes snapped to hers. For one dangerous heartbeat, all the shouting in the hall seemed far away. The king looked at her not as a burden, not as a curse, but as a girl who had dared to speak to the wound instead of the crown. Something passed between them. sharp and uninvited. Then the forge knocked again. The sound silenced everything. Asha turned. The iron belly of the warforge split along a seam no one had noticed before. Not open enough to reveal flame, only enough to breathe out a line of cold blue smoke that crawled across the floor and stopped at her bare feet. The child's voice returned. Below. Osric slammed his staff down. No one enters the lower chambers. Rhydian did not look at him. You said they collapsed. They are unsafe. Then you lied poorly. Asha felt the silver smoke coil around her ankles, gentle but insistent. It did not drag, it asked. That almost broke her. She had been commanded all her life. Pulled, shoved, ordered, struck. No one had ever asked her fear to walk somewhere dangerous and waited for her consent. The silver wolf lowered its massive head until one moonfire eye reflected her whole trembling body. Asha understood. The forge would open for her. Only for her. Rhydian understood too. Asha. Her name in his mouth no longer sounded like a question. It sounded like a warning he did not have the right to give. She looked at the crack in the forge, then at the king's bleeding wolf shadow. If what is below can answer why your wolf is dying, would you still tell me not to go? His silence was answer enough. Asha stepped toward the forge. The court recoiled. The iron mouth opened wider, revealing not flame, but stairs descending beneath the furnace, each step carved from black stone and veined with silver ash. Cold air rose from below, carrying the scent of burned cedar, old blood, and lullabies turned to smoke. Rhydian moved to follow her. The silver wolf growled, but softer this time. Not refusal, warning. Asha glanced back at him. Your blood hurts it. Rhydian's mouth tightened. Then I will hurt beside it. Before Osric could command the guards, the stairs beneath the forge lit one by one. At the bottom, something small began to sing. Asha knew the tune. She had never heard it before in her life. The stairs beneath the forge were not built for living feet. Each step held heat without warmth, as if generations of fire had passed through the stone and left only memory behind. Silver ash glowed inside the cracks, lighting the descent in thin veins. Asha moved first because the stairs had opened for her, but every instinct in her body screamed that a girl like her should not lead a king anywhere. Behind her, Rhydian followed with his sword drawn. His wounded wolf shadow moved with difficulty along the walls, too large for the narrow passage, its torn shape bending and stretching over stone. The silver smoke wolf came last, not walking so much as pouring down the steps, its moonlit body brushing the ceiling without breaking apart. Above them, the court's noise faded into a muffled storm. Osric had not followed. That troubled Asha more than if he had. Men like him did not abandon secrets. They waited where secrets could be turned into weapons. The song drifted upward again, soft, wordless, a cradle tune made of smoke. Asha's knees weakened. She had never been sung to, not in any memory she trusted. The forge kitchens had offered orders, curses, and the wet coughs of tired servants. Yet her bones knew this melody with such painful certainty that tears gathered before she could stop them. Rhydian noticed. Do you know it? No. The answer came too quickly. His gaze sharpened, but he did not press. That restraint unsettled her. She was used to powerful men taking answers by force when patience failed them. Rhydian seemed to fight the urge every time he chose not to. At the bottom of the stairs, the passage opened into a chamber that should not have existed. It was round, vast, and buried directly beneath the hall of cinders. Iron roots descended from the forge above, twisting through the ceiling like the veins of a dead heart. Along the walls stood dozens of stone cradles, each one blackened by old flame. Some were empty, some held ash, some held small silver handprints burned into the rock. Asha stopped breathing. Rhydian's sword lowered. The silver smoke wolf gave a sound so low that dust trembled from the ceiling. This was never a war chamber, Asha whispered. No, Rhydian said. His voice had changed. It held horror now, but not surprise enough. Asha looked back at him. You knew there was something below. I knew there were sealed records. I knew my father ordered this level forbidden before I was old enough to shift. His eyes moved across the cradles. I did not know this. The wounded wolf shadow behind him turned its head away from the cradles as if shame had teeth. The song grew clearer. Asha followed it to the center of the chamber, where one cradle stood apart from the rest. Unlike the others, it had not been carved from stone. It was made of black iron and lined with pale ash. Across its rim, old symbols glowed and faded like tired eyes. The ash fan in Asha's hand pulled toward it. She almost dropped the fan, but her fingers would not open. Rhydian stepped beside her, close enough that his heat disturbed the cold around her shoulder. The silver wolf growled softly, but did not drive him back. Asha looked into the cradle. At first, she saw only ash. Then the ash shifted. A small shape sat up inside it, not a child of flesh. A wolf cub made of silver smoke and ember light stared back at her with eyes too old for its tiny face. One of its ears was torn. Around its throat hung a chain of black fire, each link stamped with the Kharrow seal. Asha made a broken sound. The cub tilted its head. "Asha," it whispered. Rhydian went rigid. His shadow wolf staggered as if struck. The cub looked at the king next, and its small body trembled with fear so ancient it had become instinct. The silver smoke wolf behind Asha moved forward, placing itself between the cradle and Rhydian's blood. Rhydian did not retreat, but his face tightened. "I will not harm it," he said. The cub's answer came as a hiss of smoke. "Kharrow hands said that before." Asha felt the words like a knife dragged through her own chest. She reached toward the cub, then stopped. No one had taught her how to comfort something made of flame and betrayal. The cub looked at her hand, at the tiny silver wolf-eye mark glowing in her palm. Its chain rattled. "Key," it whispered. Asha stared. "I am not a key." The cub's eyes filled with blue fire. "Name key, blood key, last warm hand key." Rhydian's voice lowered. "What is it?" The chamber answered before the cub could. One by one, the cradles along the wall began to glow. In each blackened basin, smoke rose into the shape of sleeping wolf cubs. Not one, not 10, dozens. Small, curled spirits with sealed throats and bound paws, their forms faint from years of being fed into the forge above. Asha backed away until her shoulder struck Rhydian's armor. She should have moved at once. She did not. For a heartbeat, his hand hovered near her back, not touching, not claiming, only there if she fell. The restraint was almost unbearable. The cub in the iron cradle spoke again. They took the first flame from mothers, took the cubs from names, fed kings with stolen howls. Rhydian's face went white beneath the shadow of his crownless brow. "My bloodline," he said. The cub bared tiny smoke teeth. "Your throne." The words struck harder than accusation because they were too small, too wounded, too true. Asha looked around the chamber. Every cradle was a grave. Every grave had been turned into fuel. The royal forge had not gone dead because the Kharrow flame weakened. It had gone silent because there were no stolen children left to burn. Her stomach twisted. She thought of all the years she had scrubbed soot from the upper halls, all the ash under her nails, all the times she had washed black dust from noble boots without knowing what kind of bones had made it. A sound escaped her throat. The silver smoke wolf pressed its muzzle near her shoulder. Rhydian looked at her then, and for once the king had no command ready. Only grief, only a terrible dawning. Before either could speak, a bell rang above them. Not the court bell. The execution bell. Rhydian turned toward the stairs. Asha heard boots moving overhead, many of them, fast and organized. Then Lord Osric's voice rolled down from the Hall of Cinders, cold and clear. "By authority of the old forge law, the Omega has entered the sealed burial chamber and awakened hostile spirits. The Alpha King is compromised by curse, contact. Until judgment is restored, the Royal Council assumes command." Rhydian's eyes turned gold bright. Asha tightened her grip around the ash fan. The cub in the cradle began to cry smoke. and every dead wolf cub in the chamber opened its eyes. The buried chamber woke like a nursery remembering how to grieve. Silver eyes opened in every blackened cradle. Small wolf cub spirits lifted their heads from ash that should have been empty, their bodies thin as smoke, their paws bound by chains of black fire. None of them howled. That was worse. Their silence filled the chamber with a grief too old for sound. Asha stood among them with the ash fan burning in her hand and understood, with a sickness that hollowed her chest, that the royal forge had not been built to make weapons. It had been built to consume heirs. Rhydian's sword remained raised toward the stairs, but his gaze kept drifting to the cradles. The king looked as if each tiny spirit had become a blade pressed beneath his ribs. Above them, Osric's voice rang again through the stone. Bring moon, salt chains. If the king resists, bind him as curse. Touched. Rhydian's wounded wolf shadow snarled against the wall, but the sound broke halfway into pain. Fire spilled from its ribs, brighter now. The more the dead cubs woke, the weaker it became. Asha saw the pattern before anyone spoke it. They are connected to him, she whispered. The cub in the iron cradle looked at her with ancient, exhausted eyes, fed into him. Rhydian went still. The words did not accuse him gently. They struck the chamber and stayed there. Asha turned to the cub. How do I stop it? The cub's chain rattled. Return the first flame. How? Its small, smoky muzzle trembled. Name us. Asha stared at the rows of cradles. I don't know your names. The dead cubs lowered their heads. Rhydian's jaw tightened. The records. Asha looked at him. His eyes had turned colder, harder, not with denial now, but with purpose. If these children were taken, someone erased them from lineage books. Osric keeps the old forge ledgers in the council vault. From above came the thunder of boots descending. The silver smoke wolf moved toward the stairs, moonfire gathering in its teeth, but Asha felt its strength flicker. The spirit was vast, yet tied to the same stolen flame that had kept the cubs trapped. If it fought too long, it would burn itself empty. Rhydian stepped toward the stairs. Stay behind me. Asha almost obeyed. The habit was there, deep as bruising. Then she looked at the cub in the iron cradle, at its chain stamped with the Kharrow seal, and anger rose so cleanly it frightened her. No. Rhydian looked back. Asha lifted the ash fan. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. If your uncle wants me named as a curse, he will do it whether I hide or not. If the forge opened for me, then I walk out where they can see me. His expression darkened. They will try to kill you. They already did. That silenced him. For one breath, the king and the Omega stood facing each other in the buried chamber of stolen children, both stripped of the lies that had kept their places intact. He was not only the feared Alpha King, she was not only the chained girl. Between them stood a truth neither had asked for, and it was hungry. Rhydian lowered his sword slightly. Then walk beside me. Asha's heart struck once, hard. Not behind. Beside. The silver wolf watched them both, its moonfire eyes unreadable. They climbed the stairs together. At the top, the Hall of Cinders had become a battlefield dressed as judgment. Royal guards stood divided, some behind Osric and the council, some uncertain near the throne, a few still frozen beneath the smoke, Wolf's old command. Lady Maelith stood beside Osric now, no longer pretending fear. Her white gown gleamed beneath the blue torchlight, beautiful as frost over a grave. When Asha stepped out of the forge, every face turned. A murmur spread. She came back. No curse survives below and returns unchanged. Look at the fan. Osric raised his staff. There stands the proof. The Omega entered a forbidden burial chamber and awakened hostile dead. By old law, she must be burned before her spirit spreads. Asha felt Rhydian move beside her, but before he could speak, Maelith lifted her hand. Let her answer one question first, she said. Her voice was soft, precise, lethal. If she is innocent, why did the dead call her by name? The court leaned toward that question. Asha felt the trap close. If she denied the spirits, she betrayed them. If she claimed them, she condemned herself. The ash fan pulsed. From deep below, the cubs whispered without sound. "Name us." Asha looked at the court that had watched her kneel, then at Osric, whose ruby seal burned with stolen fire. "I don't know why they called me," she said. Osric smiled. Then Asha lifted the fan. "But I know why they are still crying." The silver smoke wolf rose behind her as the forge roared open once more, and from beneath the hall came the sound of dozens of small chains breaking one link at a time. The first chain broke beneath the hall with a sound like a child taking its first breath after drowning. Every noble wolf felt it. Some clutched their throats, some staggered against the benches, others looked down at the stone as if the dead might rise through it and name them one by one. The Hall of Cinders had been built to make power look eternal, but now the floor trembled with small imprisoned spirits the court had never bothered to imagine. Asha stood before them with the ash fan lifted, silver smoke coiling around her arms. She did not feel powerful. She felt terrified. That was what made her keep standing. If she knelt now, if she let fear fold her back into the shape they preferred, those small voices below would remain nothing but fuel. And she knew too well what it meant to be useful, only when silent. Lord Osric raised his staff, but the ruby seal on his thumb had cracked from edge to center. Red light leaked through the break. "Do not listen to her," he commanded. "The dead have no place in royal judgment." The forge answered with another roar. A second chain snapped below, then a third. Lady Maleth's composure thinned. "My lord," she whispered to Osric, too low for the court but not low enough for Asha. "End this before the ledgers wake." Rhydian heard it. His eyes cut to her. "What ledgers?" Maleth's face went still. Osric struck the floor. "There are no ledgers." The ash fan burned in Asha's palm. Silver letters crawled over the black iron. Faster now, no longer only old claw marks. The symbols reshaped themselves into names she could almost read. Not with her eyes, with the aching place behind her ribs. Mirror of the blue hearth. Toven of Emberfall. Sella, firstborn of Veynn. Asha nearly dropped the fan. Veynn, her own name. The silver smoke wolf lowered its head beside her, and its breath carried the warmth of a forgotten cradle. Rhydian stepped closer. This time the wolf did not growl. His wounded shadow still bled fire, but less fiercely now, as if each broken chain eased one thread of stolen pain. Asha looked at him. There were records. His expression hardened. Where? Osric moved first. Not toward Asha. Toward the throne. He pressed his cracked ruby seal against the charred oak armrest, and the throne's base split open. A narrow drawer slid from beneath the seat, filled with black scrolls bound in silver wire. For one breath, everyone stared. Then Osric seized the scrolls and thrust them toward the nearest torch. Rhydian lunged. Maleth swept between them, drawing a hidden blade from her sleeve. Majesty, forgive me. She slashed at his wounded side. Asha screamed a warning. Rhydian turned enough that the blade scraped armor instead of flesh, but the movement cost him. His shadow wolf buckled, and fire burst from its ribs in a bright red flare. Osric reached the torch. Asha did not think. She swung the ash fan. Silver smoke lashed across the hall and struck the torch from its bracket. Flames scattered over the floor, harmless where the smoke touched it. The black scrolls flew from Osric's hand, spinning through the air like ravens with broken wings. One landed at Asha's feet. The wire binding split open by itself. Names spilled across the parchment in burned silver. Not noble names. Children's names. Mothers' names. Pack names. Beside each one was a mark. Transferred. Sealed. Fed. The court saw. A sound went through the hall, low and sick. Rhydian picked up one of the scrolls. His face drained of color as he read. The hand holding the parchment trembled once before closing into a fist. My grandfather, he said. Osric's voice sharpened. Saved the crown. By burning children. By preserving the only bloodline strong enough to hold the packs together. Rhydian looked at him then, and the hall felt the temperature drop. No kingdom is held together by stolen screams. Osric laughed once, ugly and broken. Spoken like a boy who never understood why he lived. Every Kharrow king survived because the first war flame fed his wolf. Your father knew. His father knew. I kept you alive when your own beast began rejecting the theft. Rhydian's shadow wolf gave a wounded snarl. Asha looked at the scroll at her feet again. Sela, firstborn of Veynn. Below it, another line glowed. Infant removed. Name unburned. Vessel missing. The hall tilted. Asha could not breathe. She was not only the last daughter of the first war flame, she was the child they failed to finish erasing. Maleth saw the line too. Her face changed from fear to decision. She is proof, Maleth said. If she lives, every border pack will call House Kharrow butcher and thief. Every oath will break. Every throne, ally will turn. Osric lifted his cracked seal. Then she does not live. The ruby split fully. Black fire erupted from it, forming chains in the air. They shot toward Asha, not to bind her body, but her mouth. Rhydian stepped in front of her. The chains pierced his shadow wolf instead. He staggered, a harsh breath leaving him, but he did not fall. His hand found Asha's without looking, not gripping, asking. This time, she took it. The silver wolf roared behind them, and every name on every opened ledger rose from the parchment in burning light. Then, from beneath the forge, dozens of small voices spoke together. Return us. The plea of the dead did not fade after it was spoken. It stayed inside the hall of cinders, pressing against every stone, every throat, every noble heart that had once found comfort in not knowing what fed the crown. Names burned above the opened ledgers like silver moths trapped beneath an invisible sky. Mother names, cradle names, pack names, names stolen before first shifts, before first howls, before the children were old enough to know why fire hurt. Asha stood among them with the ash fan shaking in both hands. Rhydian stood beside her, but his shadow wolf was failing. Black chains from Osric's cracked ruby seal twisted through the beast's ribs, dragging red fire from old wounds. The stolen flame inside the king's blood clung to him like a parasite that had mistaken survival for loyalty. Each freed name weakened the lie that kept him alive. Osric saw the court notice. He used it. Look at your king, he said, voice ringing through the shaking hall. This is what her truth does. It bleeds the royal wolf. If she returns those spirits, every flame taken into House Kharrow will return with them. The king dies. The crown dies. The border packs devour us before winter. Fear moved through the nobles faster than mercy. Asha felt it turn toward her again. Not loudly, not all at once, but in the shifting shoulders, the lowered eyes, the old lords measuring how many dead children could be excused if their walls remained standing. Lady Maleth lifted her chin. No one here chose what was done generations ago, but we will all pay if an Omega's grief is allowed to unmake a kingdom. Asha looked at her. Their grief built your kingdom. Maleth's eyes flashed. Rhydian's hand brushed Asha's once, brief and fierce. Then he stepped forward. His wounded shadow wolf dragged itself upright behind him. Fire poured from its ribs now, red threaded with silver. Rhydian did not look at the nobles who feared his weakness. He looked at the court that had praised his strength while never asking what had been burned to keep it alive. My throne was fed by stolen wolves, he said. Osric's face hardened. Choose your next words with care. Rhydian turned to him. I am. The hall went utterly still. Asha knew the look on Osric's face. She had seen it on masters when a servant broke a plate, on noble sons when an Omega refused to cry. It was the rage of ownership losing shape. Rhydian raised his voice. By my crown, my blood, and my dying wolf, I name the forge ledgers true. A cry broke from the court. Osric roared, Traitor to your own line. No, Rhydian said. Last witness of it. The silver smoke wolf threw back its head and howled. Every opened ledger flared. Asha staggered as the ash fan pulled her hands upward. The names circling the hall turned toward her, no longer only pleading, waiting. Heat climbed from her palms to her wrists. The tiny silver wolf-eye mark opened like a living flame. From below, the cub in the iron cradle cried through the forge. Name us. Asha shook her head, panic rising. I don't know all of them. The silver wolf lowered its massive muzzle beside her cheek. Then remember what they were denied. Asha closed her eyes. The hall disappeared. She felt cradles beneath stone, mothers whispering through smoke, little paws pressing against warm hands, first breaths, first cries, first names spoken softly enough to protect them from jealous gods and hungry kings. When Asha opened her eyes, the ash fan was no longer black. It had become silver-white, bright as moonfire, and across its surface names moved in endless lines. She read the first one, Asha Veynn. The hall shook. A cradle spirit below answered with a sob. Asha read another, Mirror of the Blue Hearth. A chain broke. Toven Emberfall. Another, Leora Ash, Crown. One by one, the names left the ledgers and entered the air. With every name, Rhydian's shadow wolf bled less red and more silver. The returning flame hurt him. Asha saw it in his clenched jaw, in the tremor of his hands, in the way his wolf stayed upright only because pride had become its last bone. But he did not stop her. Osric understood too late that the king would let the truth finish what it had started. Burn her now. Malith moved faster than the guards. She seized a fallen silver arrow, turned, and drove it toward Asha's back. Rhydian caught the arrow bare-handed. The silver head pierced his palm. Blood spilled over the shaft. The court gasped. Rhydian broke the arrow in two and let the pieces fall. You will not touch her. Malith stared at his bleeding hand, then at his face. For one heartbeat, something like heartbreak flickered through her coldness, then rage swallowed it. She will ruin you. Rhydian looked at Asha. Not softly, not safely, as if he knew ruin might be the first honest thing his bloodline had earned. Then I will stand where the truth leaves me. Asha's heart broke open around those words. The silver smoke wolf stepped through her shadow. Moonfire filled her veins. The ash beneath her feet rose in a spiral. Her servant's grey dress whipped around her like storm cloth, and across her brow, beneath soot and fear and years of being unnamed, a crown-shaped mark of blue-silver flame appeared. The court fell back. Osric's cracked seal screamed. Asha lifted the ash fan, and every freed name turned into a small silver wolf of smoke, circling her like a living crown. For the first time, the court did not see a slave Omega. They saw the air the forge had failed to bury. Then Osric slammed both hands against the throne, and the entire hall of cinders began to sink into the war furnace below. The throne split first. Charred oak cracked from crown to base, spilling black fire through its seams. The floor groaned beneath the court, and the perfect ring of the hall of cinders tilted inward, stone slabs sliding one by one toward the open mouth of the warforge. Nobles screamed. Guards lost their footing. Silver ledgers skidded across the sinking floor, their names still burning bright as stars caught in ash. Asha stumbled, but Rhydian caught her arm before she fell. Above them, the banners twisted in a downward wind. Below, the furnace yawned wider, revealing the buried chamber of cradles and the pale eyes of dead wolf cubs staring upward from the dark. Osric stood beside the broken throne, both hands buried in black flame. His cracked ruby seal had fused to the wood, feeding on the last hidden vein of stolen fire beneath the hall. If the truth cannot be buried, he shouted, then it burns with everyone who heard it. Panic shattered the court's dignity. Old lords clawed at benches. Noble women dragged jeweled skirts through ash. Soldiers tried to force open the sealed doors, but the iron bars glowed red, welded by forge law. The same hall that had gathered to watch one Omega kneel now became a trap for every mouth that had laughed. Rhydian looked once at the doors, then at the sinking floor. "Get them out," Asha said. His eyes cut to her. "I am not leaving you. I did not ask you to." The silver smoke wolf lowered its massive head behind her, weakened now, its body thinning at the edges as the furnace pulled at every freed spirit. The small silver wolves circling Asha's crown mark flickered, their names trembling in the air. Osric had not only opened the furnace, he had made it hungry. Rhydian raised his sword and drove it into the stone. Gold light burst from the blade, spreading in a jagged line toward the sealed doors. His wounded shadow wolf threw itself behind the strike, adding its dying strength. The doors shuddered, but did not break. Osric laughed. "Still using stolen fire to pretend at mercy, boy?" Rhydian's face hardened. Then he pulled the sword free and turned toward the furnace. Asha understood before he spoke. No, his gaze softened only by a fraction, and that made it worse. "My wolf is what binds the forge. Law. If the stolen flame leaves me, the lock weakens. You will die. Perhaps. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one I have." Asha hated him then for saying it calmly. Hated the crown on his blood, hated the wound in his shadow, hated that the first man to stand beside her was also ready to become another body fed to royal history. Maleth staggered near the dais, one hand pressed to a bleeding cut at her temple. For the first time, her beauty looked human, stripped of polish by fear. She looked from Osric to Rhydian, and something inside her broke not into mercy, but survival. "Osric," she called, "stop this. The court is still useful alive." Osric did not even look at her. The court became useless when it listened. That was the moment Maleth knew what she had served. Asha saw it cross her face too late. The floor beneath Maleth cracked. She slipped, catching the edge of a bench as stone dropped away beneath her feet. For one breath, no one moved to save her. The woman who had wanted Asha contained now hung above the furnace, white gowns streaming into smoke. Asha moved. Rhydian caught her wrist. "Asha, she has answers. She tried to kill you." Asha looked at him, shaking. "Then let her live long enough to know I am not what she made me." Rhydian released her. Asha swung the ash fan. A ribbon of silver smoke wrapped around Maleth's waist and pulled her hard onto solid stone. Maleth collapsed, gasping, staring at Asha as if mercy had wounded her more deeply than revenge. "Why?" she whispered. Asha did not answer. There was no time. The furnace roared. The dead cubs below began to fade, dragged toward the black flame before their names had fully returned. Rhydian stepped into the center of the sinking hole and opened his bleeding palm. "To every wolf stolen into my blood," he said, voice carrying through fire and screams, "I release claim." Osric's face twisted. "You release nothing. You are Kharrow. You are the lock. Then I break." Rhydian drove his wounded hand into the black chain, piercing his shadow wolf. Fire exploded. Asha screamed his name as the force threw half the court to the floor. Red flame tore out of Rhydian's shadow in a flood, rushing not upward, but toward the ledgers, toward the cradles, toward the names Asha had called back into being. His wolf collapsed behind him. The sealed doors cracked. Asha felt the stolen flame pass through her like winter lightning. It wanted to use her, to crown her, to make her the next vessel because royal fire always searched for a throat to live inside. She refused. With both hands, she lifted the ash van and turned the flame downward. "Go home," she commanded. Not like a queen, like a girl who had spent her life knowing no one should belong to chains. The names answered. Silver wolves poured from the ledgers, from the walls, from the buried cradles. They raced through the black fire and broke it apart from within. One by one, the cub spirits below rose from their stone beds, no longer bound, no longer silent, each carrying a spark of its own returned name. Osric screamed as the ruby seal on his hand shattered. Black fire wrapped around him, not sent by Asha, not called by Rhydian, but awakened by the oaths he had hidden inside it. Every stolen name he had guarded turned toward him. The seal burned through his flesh, through his velvet sleeve, through the lies that had made him untouchable. This kingdom needed me, he rasped. The silver smoke wolf looked down at him. No. One word. The forge swallowed Osric's staff first. Then his crown ring. Then the old lord himself vanished into ash without flame. The hall lurched. The doors burst open, and guards began dragging nobles into the outer corridor. Maleth crawled away from the broken dais, sobbing once, quietly, as if she despised the sound. Asha turned back to Rhydian. He was on his knees. The black chains were gone. The red fire was gone. His shadow wolf lay behind him, vast and still, its torn body no longer bleeding. For one impossible second, Asha thought the sacrifice had healed him. Then the wolf dissolved. Rhydian fell forward onto the ash-covered stone. Asha reached him before anyone else. His skin was cold. Behind her, the freed cub spirits gathered in silence. The silver smoke wolf lowered its head, and Asha understood the terrible truth before it spoke. The stolen flame had returned, but nothing had remained to keep the king's wolf alive. Ash drifted around Rhydian like grey snow. Asha knelt beside him, one hand pressed against his chest, searching for the steady thunder that had made the hall tremble whenever he spoke. His heart still beat, but faintly, too faintly for a king who had stood against his own bloodline and torn the theft out of himself with his bare hand. Around them, the Hall of Cinders had stopped sinking. The broken floor hung above the furnace in jagged pieces. Nobles crowded near the open doors, too frightened to flee fully, too guilty to stay with dignity. Freed cub spirits gathered in a silver ring around Asha and Rhydian, their small forms brighter now, their chains gone. They looked less like ghosts and more like dawn seen through smoke. The iron cradle cub climbed from the forge mouth and padded toward her. Its torn ear flickered. "Last warm hand," it whispered. Asha's throat tightened. "I returned you." "Yes." "Then help him." The cub looked at Rhydian's still body. He let go. "I know." His wolf was made to live on what was not his. When he released it, the hunger had nothing left. Asha bowed her head over Rhydian's hand. His fingers were cold, the palm torn where he had caught Maleth's arrow. This was the same hand that could have dragged her, could have claimed her, could have used her power to save his throne. Instead, it had opened and released everything his line had stolen. He had not asked her to forgive him. That was why she could not leave him here. The silver smoke wolf bent over them, vast and dimming. Its moonfire eyes held grief, but not refusal. Asha looked up. There has to be another flame. The cub's small eyes turned toward her chest. Understanding came quietly. Not like a command, like a door opening. Asha remembered the warmth that had moved through her when the smoke first touched her cheek. The first flame had not been a weapon. It had not been hunger. It had been a hearth. A living oath between wolf and keeper, powerful because it was freely guarded, not stolen and fed. She placed the ash fan across her knees. "No more taking," she whispered. The cub lowered its head. Asha rested one hand over her own heart and the other over Rhydian's. The court watched in absolute silence. Even Maleth, kneeling near the shattered dais with blood on her temple and ruin in her eyes, did not speak. Asha closed her eyes. She did not give the whole flame. She did not pour herself into the empty place his bloodline had made. She offered one ember, a choice, a beginning. "If your wolf lives," she whispered to Rhydian, though she did not know if he could hear, "it lives clean, not from stolen children, not from my blood unless I give it, not from fear. If you wake owing the dead truth and the living justice." A silver spark left the crown mark on her brow. It hovered between them, trembling like a star afraid of becoming fire. Then it sank into Rhydian's chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Asha's breath broke. Then behind Rhydian, where the old shadow wolf had dissolved, a small shape stirred in the ash, not vast, not royal, not crowned in stolen flame. A dark wolf cub lifted its head, thin and shaking, its eyes gold like Rhydian's but clear of red fire. The freed spirits stepped back. The cub looked at Asha, then at Rhydian. It crawled to his side and pressed its smoky head against his ribs. Rhydian gasped. His eyes opened. Asha nearly collapsed from relief, but his hand closed around hers before she could move away. Weakly, carefully, as if even half-conscious, he feared holding too tightly. His gaze found her. "What did you give?" he rasped. "Not enough for you to own." A broken sound left him. Almost pain, almost laughter. His thumb brushed the soot across her knuckles with reverence that made her chest ache. "Good," he whispered. The word undid her more than any vow could have. The silver smoke wolf raised its head and turned toward the court. Every noble still standing sank to one knee, this time not dragged down by blood law, but crushed by what they had witnessed and survived. Rhydian forced himself upright. Asha tried to stop him. "You can barely breathe." "Then I will speak before I forget how." Supported by one hand on the broken stone and the other still holding hers, the Alpha King faced his court. "By the ledgers witnessed, by the spirits returned, and by the blood my house stole, I break the old forge law. No Omega, servant, child, or bound wolf shall ever be claimed as fuel for crown or pack again. No one dared object." His gaze moved to the council guards. "Open every sealed record. Send riders to the border packs. The truth leaves this hall before another lie can dress itself as order." Then he looked at Maleth. She lowered her eyes. Rhydian's voice hardened. "Lady Maleth Thornholt, you will live to testify. Your lands are held until judgment. Your blade failed because the woman you tried to murder gave you mercy. Remember which of you was noble." Maleth's face crumpled, but Asha felt no triumph, only exhaustion. Then Rhydian turned to her. Before the court could understand what he meant to do, he lowered himself to one knee. Not from weakness, by choice. Gasps spread through the ruined hall. Asha stared at him, unable to move. Rhydian bowed his head before the soot-stained girl they had chained to a dead forge. "Asha Veynn," he said, voice rough but carrying, "last daughter of the first war flame, keeper of the stolen names, and witness my crown did not deserve. I cannot undo what my house took. I will spend my reign returning what can be returned." He lifted his eyes to hers. "And if you will allow it, I will stand beside you while you decide what this kingdom becomes. Not above, not before, beside." Asha looked at the freed cub spirits circling the hall, at the silver smoke wolf fading into gentle moonlit mist, at the nobles who had once laughed at her shaking hands. Her hands still shook now, but no one laughed. She reached for Rhydian, not to raise a king, but to answer a man who had broken his crown open rather than let truth burn alone. "Stand then," she said. Rhydian rose with her hand in his. Dawn touched the shattered windows of the Hall of Cinders, turning the ash in the air silver-white. Below the forge, the last cradles emptied. One by one, the freed wolf cubs ran into the morning light, carrying their names home. And when the sun struck the dead war forge, it did not burn black again. It bloomed with a clean blue flame, not royal, not stolen, hers.